Hey, and do you wanna say anything, Chrissy? This is Feasterville Library.
Yeah, so I was just wanting to let everybody know if you didn't know that can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
okay. That we have another one for this summer books in August. I'm just trying to get the date up. I think it's August 6th at 6:30. So it's another Tuesday night
Yes.
one. It's a giraffe silhouette, African sunset with giraffes. It's another acrylic painting. I think what's the size of the canvas for that one? Is it a regular size?
That is a smaller one as
Oh,
well.
well, okay. Um,
Uh,
trying to see if I could pull up that, but I think I'm in the wrong.
let's see. I apologize. I have my elephant silhouette here.
We did this way.
Yes.
So that was
Me
is that 8 by 10?
I'm gonna add a spotlight. I feel like it's eight. I feel like that one might be 8 by 10.
It is.
Oh,
It's 8 by 10.
8 by 10. Okay. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's right.
Awesome.
I think if anybody needs them, I can probably grab some of those too. But I'll put the registration link in case anybody's interested in signing up after class or something. And then we'll let Anita get started.
Thanks, Chrissy. And thank you, Feasterville Library, for sponsoring this program. So appreciative. And Chrissy has the link to the registration in the chat. So you can register right there, going to that link. And it is August 6th, and that is an African sunset with a giraffe silhouette. And it was a fun one. I've done it before. So yes, Tuesday, August 6th at 6:30. I feel like August is coming up already. Yeah. Especially because I am finishing up fall programs. And I was just in Michael's this afternoon, and they have some of their Halloween stuff up. I think that's a little crazy.
That is.
Right? I mean, I'm a Halloween fan and I'm a fall fan. I love fall, but I even thought that was crazy. It's not even 4th of July.
Back to school stuff's out.
Oh, is it real?
Yes.
Yes.
In Staples, they have everything out.
Oh my gosh. Of course, now that you said that, I have to go there because that's when I get some of my other supplies, but I'm not happy about that. Not happy that it's already up. So anyway, we are traveling to Greece tonight. Summer in Greece painting. You want to make sure that you are on speaker view because I have spotlighted the painting and the canvas. This is a tiny one, 5 by 7 or 7 by 5, 7 inches down, 5 inches across. And we're going to start off with the drawing. I think it's a rather simple drawing, but the perspective can definitely be tricky. And we'll be doing, yeah, and Debbie's shaking her head, absolutely. And we will be doing more things working with perspective in the fall. So look for that. I'm also going to be adding in the fall a series where I'm actually helping you to learn about drawing as well. So we'll be doing, if the libraries pick them, there's one that is going to be, how to look at basic shapes and relate that to your drawings, and then also perspective. So doing more of buildings, and that will help you when you want to draw landscapes. So let's get started here. And we are going to start off right at the middle, sort of in the middle of the painting. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing the sea line. So where the sea meets the sky. And also we're going to be drawing this slight building here. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of draw this skyline, the sky and the sea line, and imagine for a second that this isn't here. Okay. So join me as we do that. So we're going to come down toward the left side of our canvas. And if you follow my pencil down, it's about halfway. And I'm going to move a little to the right in order to start putting in the C. And once you have that down, we want to make sure that there's enough room for this building. And as you can see on the left, eventually we will be adding some greenery. So we want to create the flat side of that building as well. Oh, Sandra Harris. We do have somebody coming in. So you should have what looks like that so far. And welcome, Sandra. I'm just going to recopy the supplies in the chat. Oops. Go. So welcome, Sandra. We're just starting to do the drawing part. And we are at the middle of our canvas creating the C line here. All right, now we're going to come back over here and we're going to finish drawing the area of that building. I have a little feedback happening. Zan, I'm just going to mute you just in case there's feedback, and let me look through. Anyone else? Okay. Just going to mute a few people. Okay. All right. So we're going to make that curve that happens in the building here. And actually, it's a little bit lower. It's kind of at a slant like that. Here we have the water line. And then we're going to start. We're going to come down just a little bit. And we're going to make the bottom of the building here on the left. The line for that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create the C line, or I'm sorry, the line for the C and where the sand starts. So that is, you have a longer line up above for the ocean. And then when you come down here, your line for the water when it meets the sand is going to be a little bit shorter than this top line. Not exactly sure if it's that short, but we're going to start creating the building in perspective. So this line may have to be adjusted a bit, just so you know. And we're going to start here, and basically first we're going to go back, or actually forward towards us. So about like this, and it's at a slant. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a corner, and then it goes in like this. And then we're going to go upwards for now, going straight up for now, a straight line. And that's going to be this building over here. And for now, we're going to make a line across the top. Now, the next part we're going to do is this perspective at the bottom, like this. And you want to make sure that your lines are light, because right now we're just sort of drawing a box. And then we're going to come back in and create all the detail that's going to happen on this side. I found that I think it's easier to do it this way and then start adding the detail instead of trying to sort of add all of these nooks and crannies up here to the building. So we're basically going to draw the side of the building, and then we're going to come back over here. And here's the corner that's going to be the side of this building. And so we make a line to the right of this part. And I'm going to go in really close so that you can see here. So, oh, it looks like my line here is a little bit jagged. So I'm going to straighten that out. Here we go. So now that I straightened that line out, we're coming back over here. Here is the line, sort of the curved part of the building. And we're going to go upward, straight, but then we're going to bend a little bit shorter than this building. So like this. Because we have a roof area that's going to happen up here. Now our roof area, we can now create like so. And for now, it's just sort of a block or sort of a strip, honestly. And now this side is also in perspective. So what we're doing, actually, we're going to now twist, or I should say, sort of make this at an angle, a little bit more down, this line here. And then your line is going to go straight down, but only halfway. And that's because we have this area that is on the side. So in perspective, it almost is going to look like we're creating steps like this. So let me make this one a little bit bigger here. Now you may have to readjust your lines. This bottom line should be straight, but also at an angle. So I'm putting my pencil that way just so you can see. This is where the perspective gets a little funky. But that's where you want to do that so that we are actually looking at the side of the building. And then this part is the back of the building. And it creates sort of a corner. I'm going to let everybody catch up with that. Before we move on to the details. And then we get to paint. So this line up here should be slightly slanted upward. So that if it looks strange, you want to make sure that it is slightly slanted upward. You also want to make sure that the bottom of your building is meeting up with your sand. And now we're going to come back to this building and draw the particulars. We're going to start with this bigger building first because we have to extend the line to this building here. And then we start to make a little bit of a architectural detail like this. And then the building has a bit of a curve. And then you want to erase the original line that we made for the boxy look of the building, because now we just added a different detail. We made sort of a curve at the top, kind of like an adobe. Well, I mean, this is in Greece, so it's probably, I'm assuming, plaster or not stone. What material am I trying to think of? Maybe plaster. I haven't been to Greece yet, so if anyone's been to Greece, let me know. It's on the bucket list, along with a lot of things. But that is our first detail. And then we're going to move down to the window and the door. So the window is going to be below this. And it is also going to be at a slight angle. So what we're first going to do, oops, my eraser's coming off here. We're going to go a little further down than you think. And we're going to make the inside of the window. And the inside of the window, this side is going to be a little bit longer. And then you have your curve. And then the window ledge is also going to be at an angle. Just a slight angle. And then in order to make it look three-dimensional, we create an outside part on the left side, like so, including a ledge. I'm going to kind of show that. And we're going to do the same thing with the door. So now we're going to come down here. We're going to do the same thing with the door. But the thing with the building is out a little bit in order to make it look three-dimensional. So we're going to make this first the outside of the door, just like we did with the window. We make that curve for the window or for the door. And the right side is longer. And then we need to make the bottom part of this, we need to make a line coming out, and we're going to move the building, the bottom of the building, a little bit out. So what I did was I added just a little bit of perspective on the building by doing that. I'm going to show that up close. So what we did was we bumped it out here by adding this line and then moved this line down a little bit so that we could bump it out and make it look three-dimensional. Now we have greenery over here, and we're just going to be adding that in. We're just going to be painting that in. We don't need to draw it. We know that we're going to be adding it. But we're now going to go over here to the left side, and we're going to draw the shadow, a very light penciled shadow under this building, just so we know to create that. And that's the last thing we're drawing, because now we are ready to paint. And I'm going to move up a little bit, because basically now we're going to be painting the sky. Oh, you know what I forgot? I apologize. I forgot these two windows. Sorry about that. I knew there was something I was missing. Before we get into our paint, we want to create these two windows in the same fashion that we did over here with the window and the door. So the line for the window is going to extend a little further here and go like that. Oops, I got to make it a little bit longer here. There we go. And this window is a little more square. But again, it's angled because we are looking at it from the side. So these are not, this is not a square that is straight, but it's at an angle. So I want to show you when something's in perspective. That's what you're looking for. And see, that creates right, sort of a perspective building. And now all of a sudden you have it in perspective. The angles look off. And so that's what we're doing here. And now we are ready for our blue sky. So our blue sky is a combination of our dark blue or regular blue and white. So I like to start off by using my bigger flat brush, and I may dip it in a little bit of water just to kind of wet it a little, and then I just tap it a little on the side on my paper towel. But we're going to start to trace around the area of our buildings and start to paint our sky. So I always mention you can go back and forth between your detail brush, your round detail brush, and your flat brush, depending on how comfortable you are or what's the easiest for you. So I'm going to start off with my blue, but I'm going to start adding some white mixed with blue, and I'm going to mix that on my palette so that I get sort of a baby, kind of a baby blue. And then I'm going to start covering the sky and having it be a little bit darker on the left side. Now, you're welcome for your sky to look a little different. It's okay. I also like to add some clouds. You know, maybe you don't want to, but I tend to have it be sort of a little darker. Oops. Let me wipe that off. A little darker on the left side of the sky. Of course, I just dropped my other paintbrush on my other painting. So if that ever happens, you can save it by quickly grabbing some water, which is what I just did, and putting it on the canvas. So you're going to paint up until the sea. And we will also be painting the sea next. But this is where you want to kind of experiment with, you know, some swirls of blue. I like to swirl my paint so that it has sort of a swirly look in the sky. I'm going very carefully along the first little building here. But again, this is where you can switch to your smaller brush as well. Said whatever you're feeling more comfortable with. I like to go over the whole sky first with this brush. I get a little bit lighter as I get to the right side of the canvas. So I'm again mixing up an even lighter blue. Even just grabbing white and going right onto my canvas. And because the paint is wet, I can mix that color right into the canvas, right into the blue. And then I'm going to switch to my detail brush for up close against the buildings here. And I'm just adding dabs of white to make it lighter. And then as you can see, I'm kind of curling my brush to make it look cloud-like. So I'm adding more white. I'm even going to start to add some clouds on the other side while the paint is wet. You can also do it as it's drying and you get a different effect. It's kind of neat. I'm curious how many people, I know not everyone is from Pennsylvania on here, I don't think, but how many people saw the sky last Sunday night? It was crazy. The clouds were incredible. I have never seen the sky look like that. They were puffy. Yeah, Debbie, you saw it too. Yeah, and if you're on my newsletter, I put some pictures. My husband Chris and I were often go for a walk in the evening. And we did so Sunday night. And caught some pictures along with other people that were outside too, and they had stopped also in just wonderment. Oh, you took video. Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, I've never seen those type of clouds before. And I looked it up, but couldn't find it originally. And then I actually saw someone on Instagram post about it from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And they mentioned that they were mammatus clouds, like mammatus. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but really neat. Look those up if you don't know what they are. I've never seen those before. Really, really neat. So continue to add white and blue in your sky. Make it the color that you want. Also including, some fun clouds if you wish. I'm now working with the paint starting to dry a little bit. But getting a little bit lighter here. And the other thing you can add in the sky is a little bit of green. So going in, using a tiny bit, you don't have to, but sort of like an incredibly light green. And you can mix that in a little bit in the blue. Now that's a little bit too green, so I'm going to go back in. I'm going to add blue. Oh, okay, still a little bit too much. Hold on. All right. Okay. That's the color I was looking for. It's going to kind of become a little bit of almost like a greenish, grayish blue. Now, again, you don't have to. I just like to do a little bit. I'm going to add more white, a bit more blue over here. Just kind of gives it a different dimension, but you can just stick with the blue and white if that's all you're feeling. That's okay too. All right, and you're going to finish up with your sky, making sure to go as close as you can to the water, because that is our next part. I like to get a little bit lighter in the sky, going towards the water. So I'm now lightening it up by adding some white. All right, and then our next part is now the water. And I start to go in with just the regular blue that we've been using. And then from there, I add in black and then a mixture of whitish blue. So basically, once you are finished with your sky, you can rinse off your brushes. Like I said, I like to use both brushes for the entire painting, just depending on what portion I'm doing. But I like to go in using my bigger flat brush first. And going in using the regular blue, especially down towards the beach area. And I like to leave the top part unpainted at first because that's where our lighter area is going to be in the sea. So you're going to be, going across where your building is, and you want to make sure to very carefully paint around your building. And this is where I said you might want to start switching to your smaller brush if you want. I kind of stick with the flat brush at this point until I get around sort of this, what I call it the step area. It's not really steps, but it looks like it. And then what you want to do is then go back to where your water line is when you're ready and paint that blue as well. And then in between there, you're going to make that water lighter. So I'll say that again in case anybody was painting and kind of missed it. So you should have regular blue on your brush, painting the lower portion, most of the water, the blue, but then you skip a spot, sort of a strip in the back towards the sky, but then you make the sea line there with the blue. And then in between, you're going to be painting blue, blue and white, and you're going to be painting wave-like strips eventually. But what you want to do when you get that blue is you want to add black to the corner here of the water. And then that black is going to kind of ebb out into the rest of the water, but sort of like in strips. I'm going to show this up close to show you exactly what I did. So I took my flat brush, right, and I painted black and mixed it with the blue. And then while the paint was wet, I stood my flat brush upward so that I could pull that color across as if we're making waves. And the water would get a little bit lighter here. So I'm just kind of patting it with the black, but I'm probably going to go back in with a little more blue on my paintbrush, on the smaller paintbrush, and kind of mix that in so that it's more of like a dark blue. And then in the back, you want to mix the blue with the white because you want the sea back here to be a little lighter. So also, while you have that blue on your brush, you could go in and quickly paint a bit of your windows. So meaning that you have some black mixed with the blue on your brush. You can take a second to kind of paint in the darker part of your windows and your door, because we will lighten those up after. Oops. Okay. And then you want the back part of the water to be a lighter blue. So now I'm grabbing my white and a little bit of mixed in with some blue, sort of a baby blue. And I'm going to mix that. Going right up against the building. And then you can start to bring a little bit of that color, again, in sort of almost like dashes to create waves in your water. I like to go a little bit lighter here in the back. And then really tiny dashes going across the water. I'm going to make sure to get all the spaces behind your building here so that it looks realistic. Okay. I'm going to add just a little more blue. Certain areas. And you can really kind of dot it on, especially using your small brush, especially as the paint is wet. You get some really nice sort of bluish color as the paint is still wet. Just take your time and have fun with that. Again, make sure you paint right up against your building so that it looks realistic. And the next part is actually going to be creating the blue inside the windows and the door by using light blue on top of sort of the dark blue that we put on there. So if you didn't get to that part, what you want to do is first create those slices of curved areas. I'm going to go in a lot closer now. Using dark blue. And then while the paint is still wet, you want to paint on light blue sort of in the middle so that you get some perspective. Now, it would be a little bit darker at the top and bottom of each cylinder. And you can go in and do that while the paint is still wet. What you're doing is you're sort of making a shadow. So I'm going to show the original again too. So again, what I did was I started off with the blue color. I even added a little bit of black to it. And that is still showing at the top of the window there, top of the window there, and the top of the door on the left side. You can see how some of that dark kind of rounds the top of the door to create what looks like a shadow. Now, once you put the dark in, you then want to mix your blue with some white so that it's a little bit lighter of a blue, sort of a medium blue. And then you paint in the center. Actually, let me get my other one here. Kind of paint in the center. And you're almost blending a little bit so that there's still a little dark up here and around the edge of the window. And the same with the door on the left side. You can even go in and add, a little bit more of some dark blue. And the dark blue meaning that I mixed blue with black so that you're getting a bit of a dark blue. So I'm going to add a little more of that. The reason we do that is because these windows are recessed. They're at, they're a bit recessed into the building. And so there would be a shadow there. Just lifting that up so you can see both paintings at this point. Put this over. Oops, this way. Oops, a little more. There we go. So. And then we are going to start the buildings. And then the last part's going to be, one of the last parts is going to be the sand. But for the buildings, they are a white and some gray, and even just a little bit of that golden brown that I mentioned. So you're probably thinking, well, the buildings are already white because of the canvas, but we want it to be the white of the paint. And basically, we start off on the left side with this building, and it's whiter at the top of the building, and then it starts to get grayish as we go down. So we're going to be mixing a little bit of black with some white. I'm also making the top of my building just a little bit curvier here. A bit more pointed. Now again, you can choose to do this with your bigger brush or your smaller brush, or go in between the two of them. I go in between the two of them, especially when it gets to this detail here. You can see how much brighter of a white the paint is than the canvas. Canvas is a little bit dingy. And then as you get to the middle here, you can start adding a tiny bit. Oops, not that dark. I'm supposed to add just a tiny bit of like the golden brown, so that you get kind of a light tan color. And then as you go downward to the bottom of the building, you're going to add black and white, mostly white, little bit of black, in order for it to be gray. So what I did here was I added a little bit of my golden brown. I added a little too much at first. So I'm kind of fighting that color. That color you can add to the other two buildings as a little bit of a part of those buildings. But now what I want to do is add mostly white with just a tiny bit of black mixed in to make a very light, dirty gray. And I'm going to add some more white to this because it's a little too brown for my liking. Now, if you want it this color, you can. You know, we're thinking old buildings here. I am moving it up into the white of the building and getting the lighter color, which is kind of nice. And then I'm going to add the gray on top. So maybe this will be just a little more of a bit of a terracotta, a very light terracotta color. And while I have that color on my brush, I'm going to go into the other side of the building here next to it. And paint that. So there are a combination of colors in these buildings. You think to yourself, well, they're only white. They actually are not. White is never just white. It reflects a lot. It usually reflects blue. So we're even going to put some slivers of very light blue on here. So I went over and jumped over to this other building to create some white on this side because it's a very bright, the sun is really shining on this side. Now remember, we're not worrying about the greenery because we will go back and paint that by hand. So we are not worried about trying to make room for the greenery. We do want to make sure that our paint is dry enough, but we're not worried right now about the greenery. So these buildings are a combination of white, whitish gray, a little bit of the golden brown, and then eventually just a teeny tiny bit of some light blue. So I'm now going in and making the lighter parts of each of the buildings. So doing a sort of whitish base. And then while the paint is wet, you start to also mix in a little bit of your golden brown and also a gray. But from right now, painting the base, a painted white. And as your paint starts to dry on the other building, while it's still wet, you can go back in with some white and dab in that color to make it look like a gradient a little bit. If you're confused, you can just look up and see. What I'm doing is I'm kind of patting on a little bit of white on this part of the building. And you can see that now, go in a little closer, it's more subtle than it was. I'm going to do the same to this building, except make it a little bit lighter while it's right up against it. Oops. But then start to add some gray. So mixing in, remember just a little bit of black to get an incredibly light gray. I'm gonna kind of show you here my palette. See that really light gray? That's just a tiny bit of black and mostly white. I'm gonna turn it around so you can kind of see the color. Move my water here. And you're going to start adding that gray, especially along the edges of this building here where it separates. And then you want to get an even darker line that is almost black, separating the two buildings so that it looks like there's two buildings. I have to get a little darker with that, but you can see what I did here. I mixed on the tip of my brush a darker gray. I'm going to show these grays. Here's my lighter gray. And here's my darker gray. And I even might want to use a little bit of black on the tip of my brush if it doesn't come out dark enough. And you're going to have to go very slowly and carefully to outline that line. And a little bit of water. No, and the other thing you can do is start to outline your windows on the other building using that dark gray. So what I mean is you actually use it for the part where it's going up against the sand, and then also around the door. So I took this dark gray and I followed it down the building. And then I also outlined around the door and the window, the shadow part, because then we're going to go back with that and we're going to add some light blue. I'm also making some grays over here and even one that looks almost black. And when you're ready, you also want to outline the top of the building, but very lightly, this curved part. But then you want to add some gray by kind of smudging a little bit with some white there, or using a very light colored gray. I'm kind of mixing one up here just a little bit. So we're gonna use some of this light to medium gray up at the top of this building and then along the edge of this one. Now, I'm doing it very messily. I'm going to be fading this out. And the way I'm going to fade it out is I'm going to add some white while the gray is still wet. I'm also going to rinse my brush a little bit, my larger brush. So I'm now going to add some white and a little bit of gray. To this part while it is still wet, because I want that gray to be a little more subdued. Even more subdued than this. So I'm going to add more white. There we go. Yep, I want it a little bit subdued there. See how it's a very light gray. But I want that edge to still stay on the building so that it looks like that is the separation line of the building there. This is also where you can start to add in some baby blue. So you probably have a baby blue that's mixed in earlier. If you don't, or you need to add more, you need to mix more, you can do that. I'm making one here, an incredibly light blue, because the side of the buildings, there's a little bit of light blue kind of scattered, even on the gray and under the windows and in the window pane areas. And we're going to start to pull that blue into the sand as well. Along with white and greenish. The sand is going to be very colorful. Mixing a little more white in. So that I get a really light blue. So I'm adding this really light blue to the bottom portion of the white here on this side of the building. On both sides. Even on top of a little bit of the gray. Just a little more gray to this building. You're all very much doing a very painterly painting. This is not an easy thing to do. So if you are struggling, you have reason to be. But you are doing great. I'm so excited to see what these are going to look like. But when you're ready, we're going to now wait for our buildings to dry a bit, and we're going to turn our attention to the left side underneath this building, and then underneath the other building, because we need to create a shadow by going in with our brown and kind of creating an outline. So right up against it, like so. And if it's not dark enough as far as the brown, you can mix a teeny tiny bit of black to make it a darker brown. But I kind of like the lighter brown here. So again, I'm using my smaller brush to do this. If you want to use your thicker brush, if it's easier for you to make lines, you could do that. But we're going to make a line separating the buildings from the sand. And then we're going to be creating the sand. And then our last part is going to be the greenery. But also, you want to take this brown and you're going to paint the shadow of the building first. This is the first layer of the shadow of the building over here on the left side. We're going to be adding baby blue into it as well. But first, we are painting it brown. And while you are at it, while you have that brown, you're going to paint your roof on of the other building. So first, paint your shadow of this building on the sand, the one on the left. Now you're going to take that brown and you're going to paint your roof on this building. So what you're going to do is you're going to go on the left side here, and I'm going to go really close so that you can really see here. Whoops, sorry about that. So you're going to paint a little bit of a line, because the way the roof is, it's kind of sitting on top, but it's at an angle. So you would see a little piece kind of drifting over that other side. And then you go straight back on this part. Now I like to add a little dash of white. Right here for a little bit of shine. Right above. And then even a tiny bit up here to make this part of the building a little bit higher. Now we're going to go into our shadow. Across the way here. Down here. And we're going to make that we're going to add some light blue. So baby blue on top of the brown. But if your paint is not wet, we're going to make it a little more wet. I'm also just going into the sand a little bit with that. So I just added some light blue on the shadow. Now you can see that what I did was I let the outside of the brown be visible, almost like it's outlining the shadow. The reason being is we're going to kind of pat that with some light white and a little bit of blue and brown again. But first, after you add that, we want to start creating the sand as well, which is going to be a combination of white, mostly white, and a tiny bit of your golden brown. And we want to do that with our larger brush. So again, go in and we take our white, but we mix it with a tiny bit of the golden brown. And we're going to be making our sand. We added some baby blue already. If you didn't get a chance to do that, that's okay. You can add it shortly. But there is a lot of color in the sand. I'm using my flat brush and going right up against some of these colors, and I'm getting sort of a dirty or dusty sand color. And then I'm going to go right up to the shadow here. And I'm going to make it lighter by kind of pouncing on a little bit with my lightish goldish brown. And you see how it's starting to blend, but it still looks like a shadow. Now, and you can start to add some more brown toward the right buildings. And while the paint is wet, you can kind of dot it on. And because it's wet, you can kind of mush it into the other colors and spread it. And it gets a little lighter in areas, which makes it look like, you know, it's blending, and that's what you want. So you can skip some areas. And you see how I'm taking my brush here. I'm gonna dip in a little more, and I'm just dotting on some areas with a little more brown. And I skip some space, do a little more. I'm also gonna go in with my smaller brush. I'm gonna go back in and add some baby blue, and we can add even a little bit of green mixed with that baby blue. Just a little bit, and it gives it sort of another color. And I go in with a little bit of white on top too. So if you see, I'm kind of dotting on some colors using my smaller brush here, making it very painterly. Which is going to lead us up until our final part, which is the greenery. I'm just rinsing out my brushes now, getting ready for the green. And the green is a combination of dark green. And that is, let me move the paintings down and so you can see my palette. So we're going to get into our green, and we're finally going to be adding the finishing touches to our painting. And that is using green mixed with a little bit of black. And I like to use the smaller brush. So getting our green ready. And then again, just kind of dabbing a tiny bit of black to that, and you're going to get a very dark green. And we're going to start off with that green as a base. And we're going to dot that down along the first area of our building on the left. And you want to kind of dot it, you know, going from side to side. Right there. And we're going to do the same with it hanging, kind of hanging over the corners of the other building. This is the first layer. This is the dark green. This is green mixed with a tiny bit of black. And then we have sort of a bush over here. as well, and any other greenery that you want to add. You know, it doesn't have to be in those spots, but that's where I added it. You know, and then you're gonna go in with your regular green and then also mixing some white to get, if you have that black and green on your brush already, and then you mix in a little bit of white, you get a lighter kind of almost like an army green, I guess they used to call it. And then you can start adding some lighter areas on top of that darker green that you just did. So here's what I'm doing. I have some kind of army green on here. I'm calling it army green. I don't know if that's correct terminology, but I'm adding it in, and I may even add some more white to just the regular green. Add that in. I'm adding it on in sort of like dots. And then kind of at the end, I like to add just a tiny bit of black with the green again, just to make some other areas a little darker, especially toward the bottom of each of the bushes. Like so. So see, I added a little more, went back and added a little more dark. I added more black mixed with a little bit of the green. I'm so curious to see what everyone's looks like. I'm going to remove my spotlight in a minute. So I'm removing my spotlight, and I'm going to stop the recording.